Today on Tamriel Talk, I discuss character progression and the skill line system in the Elder Scrolls Online, and ancient spirits of evil transform this decayed form into Mum-Ra, the ever-living. Let's get to it. Howdy folks, and welcome back to another episode of Tamriel Talk. My name is Richie, aka Bogotter, and this show is all about the upcoming MMO, Elder Scrolls Online. Now today is episode number 3, and today we're going to be talking about skill lines. That is one of the main methods of character progression in the Elder Scrolls Online, and I think it's one of the coolest things about it, to be honest. I actually talked about this a little bit in a video I did for Massively a while back, but I felt like now that I've started Tamriel Talk episodes, I have to dedicate a show to this because it's just a really neat system, and I kind of want to explain what skill lines are and just give my feedback about it. So let's get to it. Yeah, let's do it. All right, so I don't know what that was. Yeah. So basically, let me start off by saying how when you level up, what happens to your character. So you get a couple choices. You get to increase one of your character's resources, all right? And this is similar to like Skyrim and other Elder Scrolls games, where you can increase your health, your stamina, or your magicka, right? So you increase one of those 3 resources, and obviously magicka helps you power your your spells, right? Anything that's kind of magical. Your stamina helps you fuel martial abilities and things like sprinting or dodging and sneaking. And obviously your health is, how much damage you can take before you die. Now, there's no cooldowns on any abilities in the Elder Scrolls Online, so everything is kind of resource-based. Now, this decision to, bolster your health or your magic or your stamina, this is a decision that can be respec'd at some point. You can actually, rebuild your character in different ways. We don't know exactly how that's going to be done yet or what the cost is, but we did ask this question when we were at ZeniMax, and they did confirm that you can change this later, so that's good. Now, the other thing you get to do when you level up is you acquire a skill point, and you have to select where to put that. And that's where skill lines come in. Now, your character will start off with 3 different skill lines. You will have a class skill line, a weapon skill line, and an armor skill line. And you can spend your point in any of those skill lines, and you can unlock different things. There's different passive and active abilities in those. And there's tons and tons of abilities, but like many, MMOs these days, you have a limited skill bar, right? I think the build that I had, you had like 5 normal abilities in there, and just keep in mind you still have like left. You could do a power attack with your left mouse button, and you're doing blocks with your right. So you have some abilities tied to just your mouse movement. And then you have 5 activated abilities you can put down in your slot, and then you've got like an elite skill later and stuff like that. So there's more than just 5, but it is one of that kind of limited deck building type styles that we're seeing more and more popular with games. So the skill lines, you'll spend a point, and so for example, as a sorcerer, I had access to the sorcerer skill line, and in there were subsections. So I could spend points in the dark magic section, the Daedric summoning, and storm calling. All right, and there were some abilities in there for those. So I could choose one of those and then slot it down in my bar, or I could go into the weapon skill line, and I can spend points on two-handed weapon. I think it was two-handed weapon, hand and shield, dual wield, bow, destruction staff, or restoration staff. These are the weapon types in the game. Any class can equip any weapon, and when you put them on, that controls like your left click and your right click, right? Your main attack, your powered up attack, and stuff like that. But you also have access to any of the activated or passive skills that are associated with that weapon as well. So I can't remember the exact names of any of the abilities, but I think like the great sword, not the great sword, like a two-handed weapon, for example, you could slot in a skill that kind of did like a cleave type thing. So that's just an example. So you can spend points to unlock skills for a specific weapon. And then the armor skill line is also there, and you can unlock mostly passive things on the armor for light armor, medium armor, and heavy. And like light armor might do things that increase your magicka regeneration, and the heavy armor helps you mitigate damage a little bit more, but you can choose different skill points in those. So now the cool thing is, now this is where it kind of gets fun, is those are only 3 of the skill lines in the game. And I think at launch they said there's going to be around 15 different skill lines. Okay, and that's going to unlock a whole bunch of other abilities that you can acquire. So they said that things that, to unlock the other ones, you have to actually do things in game. For example, if you there's a world skill line, and the world skill line has things in it like vampire skills or werewolf skills. So if you find a way in game, kind of like you do in Skyrim or Oblivion, stuff like that. If you get bit by a vampire, or you do that story mode, then you might have access to some vampire skills that you can slot in. There's also a guild skill line. If you join the Mages Guild or the Fighters Guild, you actually unlock a new skill line with new abilities because you joined one of those. And the Thieves and the Assassins Guilds, that's not really going to be ready for launch from what they said. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. So, and there's also like a PvP skill line for people who are going to be really into the Alliance battle in Cyrodiil. And it's just a cool system. And like we don't even know all of them. There's 15 different ones. And so I'm sitting there playing the game. This is back in March at ZeniMax, and every time I leveled up, I was spending points in my sorcerer skill line. And then one of the devs behind me said, you can put skill points into the different weapons. And I said, yeah, I know, but I'm kind of feeling reticent to do so. And they asked me why. I said, well, I'm a sorcerer, and right now I'm using destruction staff, but I also found a great sword, and I also found a bow, and I was swapping them back and forth, and I felt like it was fun to kind of experiment with different weapons. I don't want to unlock a skill in one of those weapons when I might find a better one and start using that. And so I asked the question, I'm like, well, so how easy it is to respect your choice? How can I change, which skills I've actually unlocked? And they said, you can't. And I said, ever? And they're like, no, you can't ever change which ones you've unlocked. And I was like, what? So, and then they said, well, we've made it so that you can actually acquire all the skills in your skill lines. There's enough skill points from leveling up, and there's also these sky shards that you can find around the world. They're hidden around the world, and every 3 of the sky shards that you find will give you another skill point. So eventually, you can unlock all the skills and all the skill lines you have access to, and that's like a form of alternate advancement after you hit max level. Like, you can hit max level, you'll have a lot of the skills, and you might have enough skills to make a good build or whatever, but for those completionists out there that want to have every possible combo, you can go out and do that. So I thought that was interesting. Now you can, so you can't respect that, and I told you before, you can change your allotment of health, stamina, magicka. But here's another thing about the skills. So let's say I choose an active skill for the destruction staff or whatever, what happens is it starts ranking up as you use that skill. And, that's very familiar to someone who played like Skyrim or something like that. So you use it, and the more you use it, it actually starts ranking up. Once it ranks up to rank 4 and hits max, you get a morph choice. So this skill can take a branch into 2 different skills. This is only for the active skills, not the passives. And what happens is, and I don't have a good example because things change, and it's been a while since I played and I don't remember the names, but for example, you might be able to take a spell that just did damage to a single target, and you can morph it into being an area of effect spell. Or the other morph choice might be it hits for a decent amount of damage, but then it puts like a dot on the person, and it actually does more damage over time. So you can choose which way you want your ability to morph into. And this is it's interesting. You can respect that choice. Okay, so while you can't redistribute all your skill points and unlock different skills in a different order, you can change which morph choice you do. So in general, that's kind of how things work. Interesting. It's probably the part of my gameplay that I found the most exciting. Maybe, I don't know if different's the right word, but it was intriguing. It felt fun. I liked gaining a level. Gaining levels was meaningful. How about that? Let me put it that way. Some games, they'll have like a couple of filler levels where you don't really get to do anything fun. This, I felt there was something fun to do every single level, and you couldn't get enough skill points, right? And you really wanted to find those sky shards, because here I could unlock something different. Now, there's probably the thing I like best about it is the fact that a lot of these skill lines will open up for actually doing things in the world, right? Too often you just unlock abilities just for gaining levels, or maybe just you run up to a vendor and you purchase skills. I like the fact that I won't ever see the Mages Guild abilities unless I actually go in game and do the quests associated with joining the Mages Guild, right? Or I won't ever see a vampire skill unless I figure out how to contract that affliction. So that really opens up a lot of possibilities. It also kind of feels like they could add more skill lines with a patch or something like that. So they'll release with 15, and maybe 3 or 4 months down the line they'll do some new content. And if you complete this new content, you'll unlock a new skill line with new abilities in it. That sounds really fun. Now I will say I'm not going to get my hopes up too much, because I feel like that happens like in Guild Wars 2. One of the cool things about it is it really feels like they could just add a new weapon, right? They can add like a great axe in, and then suddenly a bunch of the new professions have some new abilities and stuff like that. And they're going to do that eventually, but it's obviously, it changes the balance of the game and stuff like that. So they're not going to do that too frequently. And here we are, I don't know, we're like 9 months since release or something like that, and there hasn't been new weapons added to the game. So I think that they can do that in Elder Scrolls. They can add new skill lines. Hopefully they will, but it's probably not going to be something that occurs very frequently, and probably for good reason. So I mentioned that as a positive, but we'll see how often they actually do that. Now, a couple things that I'll mention that I'm a little bit leery of in terms of the system. I've actually described how skill lines work to a couple of my friends, I mentioned it separately, and how this whole thing works. And all of the people that I mentioned it to had the same exact immediate response was, if if only one of the skill lines out of the 15 are tied to your class, right? And all the other ones are kind of open to anyone that completes those story things, then what is really the big difference between characters? Like if there's a build, that doesn't even use class skills, that's pretty, powerful or popular, isn't everybody going to be able to do that and just gravitate toward the powerful builds? And, thinking about it, that is kind of, it could be an issue. They will certainly need to balance the class skill lines to actually make those almost need to be part of every build, right? You probably want them to have at least one skill or two skills from your class skill line, because otherwise there's not, there's no, your class doesn't really matter at all. And I know they want to de-emphasize the meaning of the class, and they certainly have accomplished this, right? They don't want it to be this kind of locked-in archetype. Because you can be a sorcerer with heavy armor, or you could be, a Templar and use a restoration staff or a destruction staff or a bow, or, you can do any combination of weapons and armor. It doesn't matter. But the one thing that differentiates one character from another is their class. So that is a concern. We'll have to see how that plays out once we get our hands on the game a little bit more often. I will say that I did speak to Maria Alaprando at the dev event, and she had a really cool PvP spec on a sorcerer that she loved. And I asked her about it, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I use a mix of heavy armor and medium armor." And I think she said she used a greatsword and a bow. Something like that, something very non-sorcery, and she's like, oh, she runs around and she melts faces and all this kind of stuff. And so I asked her specifically, I'm like, so why do you need to be a sorcerer for this thing to work? And she said, oh, 2 of my skills on my hotbar are sorcerer skills, or this and this, and blah blah blah, and this does this, blah, 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 blah. And she just spoke basically a foreign language to me, and it was great to hear, because she was totally enthusiastic, and I totally believed her that she was killing people left and right with it. But I have no idea what those abilities were or why. But the point is, she did require sorcerer skills to actually make this build work. So a Templar or a Dragon Knight would not be able to do this exact build. So I think that'll play out okay. It's just something to note when you do de-emphasize the class thing and give characters access to all these things. You can, there could be like this homogenization of the characters. They can't have a build that is super powerful that does not require any class skills in it. So we'll see how they balance that out. So that kind of wraps up how skill lines work. I do think it's very intriguing system. Like I said, probably the best thing about it is just it's fun to gain levels, and that's kind of important. And it also has that built-in character progression after max level. A lot of times games fail to capture a sense of progression past, besides just gear progression past max level. But this is kind of interesting, because you will hit max level and you will not have all the skills unlocked, and you can kind of go around the world and and try to unlock the different skill lines and stuff like that. So let me know what you think about the skill line system in the comments field below, and give me a like and a favorite. That really helps me out, and I appreciate it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can be notified when future videos are released, and you can contact me on Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch TV. I'll put all that information on the screen, and I hope everybody has a fantastic day. See you next time.
Ancient spirits of evil, transform this decayed form to Mumra, the other living.
Thundercats, hello, anyone?